In 1981, University of Otago is one of the oldest universities in New Zealand. Professor James Flynn actually found a 50-year document that about to change the world perception. The document is from 1930s. It basically showed that the soldier in World War II is way smarter than soldier in World War I on IQ level. By how much? An average Joe in World War II can be ranking top 20% in World War I. They basically, average Joe can be even a general back then. From the professional background of Mr. Flynn, he understands this is impossible. People IQ not gonna change. There has to be something wrong. Maybe because New Zealand soldier changes due to some reason. So he started picking up the phone, calling all his colleagues all over the world. He called in the Dutch researcher, Estonian researcher, USSR researcher. But something shockingly is this is a global pattern. All the soldiers, regardless what side you're on, it's become smarter and smarter. Suddenly, Mr. Flynn feel I may discover something bad, which is war will make people smarter. That's not true. Just let me tell you, that's not true. The real case is not actually because of war, because after that, all these researchers from all over the world gather together, go to different schools in different parts of the world. They surprisingly find out that student in grandson generation is way smarter than grandpa. So what is actually going on? By side-by-side comparison of questionnaire, most of the part, people behave the same. But the new generation score way much better on the abstract term. For example, what is money? What is freedom? What is company? What is democracy? But this still cannot explain why IQ will change on generation. Why the new generation can think way abstract, and what's the relationship between abstract thinking and IQ? Bear these two questions, this worldwide researcher group went to Estonia, a remote villages, to figure out what's specifically going on in people's head after generation and generation. When the researchers arrived in Estonia, which is USSR territory, they went to this remote village. They yet participate in anything modern world. They don't have advanced technology, etc. Then they start asking them some question because they just behave like the World War I soldiers. But the answer is so shocked. Like I cannot even hold my straight face to tell the story because of how shocked it is. When you ask people to separate colors, they are impossible to do. For example, light blue, dark blue, and red. Separate into two categories. They say, no, we cannot do that. Then you ask some question like, was a moon and a coin in common? They will tell you they have nothing in common. You cannot just compare them at all. But for you and me, we will think the common thing is the shape of it. The most absurd answer that Mr. Flynn recorded in his notebook is that when he started asking one of the villagers, Ryan, a question to separate 3 adults and 1 child, how can he categorize them? And this is the answer of him. The boy must stay with the others, he argued. The adults are working, and if they have to keep running out of fetching things, they will never get the job done. But the boy can do the running for them. I know, stay with me, please. I know it sounds absurd. Like, I don't even understand it. But this is a common thing for people who from 50 years ago, 100 years ago. That's the way they think. And Mr. Flynn even write down in the notes. And Miss Flynn even write down in the notes that the main difference between remote village and us is actually because the society there is not that complicated, it's not that complex. So they cannot think anything besides their own experience. How he get the conclusion? Because when he go to some collective farmer in USSR, he actually find out lots of people are capable. The reason why Mr. Flynn can conclude that they cannot think outside their experience is actually a comparison with all other a little bit more advanced collective farmers. When they go to this collective farmer, they find this collective farmer leader. They ask him a question like, oh, in the north have lots of snow. When there's lots of snow, the bear is white. So what's the color in the north? The leader will tell you, oh, I've never been, but I guess it's white. Right? It's self-explanatory here. But when they ask the question to the remote villagers, they will tell you, how the heck I will know what the bear look like in the north? I've never been there. Even then, you give him step-by-step clue what's going on. They still couldn't make any sense. And note that this is only 1950 remote village. In the end, the final conclusion of Mr. Flynn is when the society becomes more complex, people will think more complex and more abstract. They can have conclusion outside their own experience. And how powerful this thinking complex living in the modern world is actually really shocking numbers. Compared to 100 years ago, our generation nowadays, an average Joe will rank top 98%. So 98%, how drastic is you grab average high school student, put 100 years ago, 1925. He can be friends with Einstein and have a perfect conversation with no problem, a smart conversation with no problem. And the whole generation become more complex, think more abstract, higher IQ. This whole process, people will call Flynn Effect. If you look online, check up what's Flynn Effect, that will be the whole story. However, if you look at the timeline, you know the story don't just stop here. What actually motivated me to make a video and I want to share with you guys is the study he done after he concluded the Flynn Effect. Is he actually found out college students nowadays behave no different than remote villagers. You hear me right? No actually difference. Let me read some notes that when they testing the nowadays college students. So they are testing college students think outside their subject or just applying the knowledge of applying the abstract thinking. That's their note when they do the research. In terms of framework that can best put their conceptual reasoning skill to use, they are horrible. Biology and English major did poorly on everything that was not directly related to their field. None of the major, including psychology, understood social science method. Science students learn the facts of their specific field without understanding how science should work in order to draw true conclusion. Neuroscience major did not do particularly well on anything. Business major performed very poorly across the board, including economic. Econ major did the best overall. Economic is a broad field by nature. School nowadays are forcing people to pick a major because we're specializing in certain area. It actually start pushing people become remote villagers. People have a hard time to use what they learned outside their experience. You learn this concept in math today, you can only apply in the homework that professor gave you today. You cannot use other places. And what's even more shocking is there's 3/4 of Americans are finding a job outside their field, which means they technically went to school for nothing. And after more testing, they even found out that GPA have zero correlation with conceptual thinking, abstract thinking, which means when you have a good GPA, you're not necessarily good at it. That's the reason why when we're in workforce, we also look at someone who will think, oh, how did he even graduate college? Why I have to over-explain some simplest task to him? And this is exactly the reason why. Especially when the world is rapidly changing, it requests us to think even more abroad, more abstract. Otherwise, we will become a 20 years old, but our cognitive ability like a grandpa. But for the people who constant practice, even when they're at older age, their brains still act like 20 years old. And this is choice for you. In the end of the study, Mr. Flynn actually concludes this. He said, like chess master and firefighters, pre-modern villagers relieve on things being the same tomorrow as they was yesterday. They was extremely well prepared for what they had experienced before and extremely poor equipped for everything else. They were perfectly capable of learning from experience, but failed at learning without experience. And that is what a rapidly changing wicked world demands. Conceptual reasoning skills that can connect to new ideas and work across content. And to be a conceptual thinker is not an option for us because we will be left out. And in the end, college students facing a really big challenge, or college graduates, because people don't even like college nowadays. You can even see from the numbers, college depression rate is 44%. It's almost 5 times higher than society average. If you're interested in this topic, I also make a video and I will link right here or down to the description. In the end, lots of people nowadays spend lots of mental energy, time and money to go to college, but they rarely get any benefit from it. And just because people here realize how important the study like this are. Share this video to the people who you actually care. And I hope I help you. My name is Paul. I see you next time. Thank you.